So today in this session, what we'll try to do is, so we have learned the different types of routing guards. That is nothing but this is the activated route, can activated child route. So can activated child. So we have seen it, and we have also seen the easier implementation, refactor implementation, how we can add the can activate and can activate child in one class, so that we can use the both the can activate and can activated child for this as a routing guard for the routes. So where the routes we have implemented app routing module. So here we have used this can activate child, and also can deactivate we have implemented at the top and here also. So these are the routing guards which you will be using. Apart from this routing guards, we have another routing guard also, can load. So which will be useful for the lazy loading thing. So when we learn about the lazy loading, we'll try to learn about this one. Can load, which we will be using very less often we will be using, but I will try to tell you when we are trying to use the lazy loading. I think where we will be using this lazy loading. So here in this modules you'll learn about the lazy loading. And next comes the static data resolve and the use hash. So here these are the two things which we want to discuss it. So for example, let's say that, so now the concept which I am trying to tell you is less often we will be using. Just I want to tell you before telling the resolve with concept, I want to tell you this one. For example, let's say that we are having a categories component. Okay, we are having a categories component. Now I want to send any data to this one. So here I can send something like data. You want to send any data. So when we are moving into categories or anything, I want to send any data. So here I can move something like user Leela dummy. So like this we can send some, so you want to send some data. So you can send this static data like this. Okay, without any problem, you can send the static data to this one. So now I am sending the static data. Static data means the fixed data. So I want to send some information when somebody goes into this categories component. Now after entering into this, when we enter into this categories component, here I want to capture this the data, static data. If any static data was there in this categories component, I want to catch it. Means, so here let's inject the router. And what I want to do is, so here this dot router dot. So we will be having a method that is nothing but, sorry, not router, route, right? So we are trying to take the current route data. So activated route. This dot route dot data dot subscribe. So you will be subscribing to this one. Let's use the subscribe. And here I can use data. So now if I console.log of data, let's try to see that will happen. So now if I go to into this one and let's inspect this element. Now if I home about us and if I go to categories, see here I'm able to access this user Leela and also dummy data here. So whatever the data we are trying to send it to the categories component. So using this data, so we can access it. So now you can say that, sir, this is a static data only, right? So why we want to mention it here? So we can directly go and we can add it directly here. So we can use it directly here, right? We can use it absolutely. So just I am telling you the scenario. So if you want to send a data to the through the routing means, so we can send it like this. So any route. So if you want to send for this route, you can add a data key here and now you can send it. So now this is for static data. Okay, this is for static data. So for example, let's say we want to send a dynamic data. Now you want to send a dynamic data for this one. For example, let's say that this is a categories component. So that means categories component will have a categories data. So let's say categories component. This is our categories component, right? Let's remove this one also. So let's say that we have a categories. Do we have a service for this categories? Let's try to see it. Services, we don't have a. Let's try to create a categories. Category.service.ts. So here we'll be having export class category service @injectable. So here I'll be provided in root. So this is a injectable provided in root. So here I'll be having a categories data which is of type I category or something like this. So we don't have this one. I think we want to mention it. Let's see, let's do it like this only. Enough. Oh, okay. So we have in category details like this. Here I will try to maintain like this only. One. Instead of creating, I am maintaining here. Okay. So what is this one saying? Category says no and is not definitely said in the constructor. Oh, somewhere I have written wrong. Yeah. So fine. So we are having these categories, and instead of creating an I category separate like this, I have used it here only. Now this is our category service. Now what I want to do, so let's go to the categories. Whenever we want to access these categories, so let's inject the category here. Private category service, sorry, category service is equal to category service. Okay, and here I'll be having a categories of type ID number, and also you'll be having a name of type string, and this should be an array. Okay, so I have mentioned it like this. Now on ng on init, I will get the categories. This dot categories is equal to this dot category service dot, sorry, category service dot categories. So we got the categories. If you want to show the data, you can show the data here. So here I can show. So simple, a simple thing. You'll try to do it. ng for category of categories, and here I will try to show only category, not name. Enough. I'll try to show only the name. So this is the details we are trying to show. And if I go into this one, so here I'm able to show the categories details. If I go outside, it will ask you about the can deactivate. Okay, fine. So here are the details we are trying to show. Now what we are doing here, the logic what we are trying to do here, categories component. So this categories component is dependent on this categories. So that means whenever we come to this categories component, so first it will try to get the categories, no matter where it will get. So where the category service can call to the external HTTP call and all those things it will try to make, and it will try to get the categories. Those are the things that is categories headache. It will try category service headache. It will do. Category service concept is to return the categories. From where it will try to get, where that's the own logic. That's a different logic. But here the category component needs the categories. So that categories is when the categories components loads, it is dependent on the categories thing. So now instead of writing the data here, instead of writing this all logic here, so we can write it in a before loading of this routing. So now we know that this categories component, in order to load, we need to send the categories to this one. So here it is better for us if you send the data to this one. Okay, so for this one what we will try to do is we use the resolve guard. So resolve guard, what it will try to do is, when a component is dependent on any other data, so before loading that component, this resolve guard will try to get the data before loading, and it will send the data along with it, so that the component while loading there is no need to ask the category service again this categories data. So whatever the data it is required for this one, for the component, so we can write it in the resolve component, so that every time when the component is loading, the resolve guard will try to get the data and will try to send it to you. So in order to write this one, what we will try to do is, so here let's go into these services, not services. So it's not a guard, it will not give the permission or anything. So automatically the component will load, the routing will load without any problem. It will not restrict the routing and all, but the data which is necessary for that component to load, before loading only it will try to gather that data and it will send it to the component. So this is the usage of this resolve guard. So here I can use create category dot category hyphen resolver dot service dot ts. I can write anything. So here I will try to do export class category resolver service. So it implements resolve. Okay, it implements resolve. So that's it. So now when you implement the resolve, so this resolve needs a data. So type of data. So what is the type of data I want to send? So I want to send the categories data. The categories data is nothing but it will contain. So he, or otherwise you'll try to create a model so that you will not get confused instead of writing all the places. So let's create a model. Where is that model went? Yeah, here it is. Where is this? Oh, I have created a file. Sorry. Remove this one. Let's go into this one. Let's create a folder. Models. And in this model, I will create iCategory. iCategory.ts file. So here you'll be having export interface. iCategory. And here we'll be having ID of type number. And also another one is user, sorry, name of type string. Okay, so these are the two things. Now let's go to the auth. Where is this one? Category resolver. So this one will send a data that is nothing but iCategory of an array. Okay, so like this we need to sell. So what is the type of data we are trying to send? So that is nothing but an iCategory data, that is also array of categories. So now this one will try to implement resolve method. Okay, so it will be having one resolve method. If you take this resolve method, so same thing. So you will be having one route, activated route snapshot, and also the state router snapshot. So this one will return iCategory or observable of iCategory or promise of iCategory. So can activate these things will return a boolean thing, but here this one will return iCategory categories data. So what I want to do, so I want to get the categories. Where I can get this one? So here I can get constructor. So private category service of category service. Now if you want to get, so here I can get let categories is equal to this dot category service dot categories. We got the categories and we'll return these categories. That's it. That's it. Finish. So if you want, you can also where is this categories? Here you can say, instead of having this one, iCategory. So now in resolver we have written the data whatever we want. And now let's go to the component. Let's close these all the things. You'll get confused. So this is our category resolver, and in the categories component, so there is no need for us to implement these all the things. Okay. So now let's try to implement this one iCategory. So there is no need for you about the category service and all those things. So when we are loading this component, so that routing component itself will give you those all the details. So now here we need to write. So when this component is getting loaded, so resolve. Okay. So you will be having an object. I didn't remember exactly. An object categories. Okay. So here you will be using something like category resolver service. Okay, so this is the thing we will be having. Let's try to see the output how we will have. So we are using this resolve. So whenever this resolve is there, so whatever the data this category resolve service is returning, store it in the categories we are trying to say. Now let's try to see in the categories component.ts file. Here we can capture it using the route. So private route activated route snapshot, and here I can catch it in such a way that this dot route dot data dot subscribe. Oh, not routes, activated route snapshot is also the same one and the same only. Activated route subscribe, this dot subscribe, yeah, subscribe of data let's try to see whether we are able to get the data or not. Console.log of data. That's it. So now if you go into the output and let's try to inspect the element, and in the console, so here if you try to go about us, and if I click on the categories, we are not able to see it. What is the problem? Injector category resolve service. Okay. So this is injector problem, category resolver service. So when we are trying to inject anything, we need to write @injectable provided in root. So we have it provided this one, right? Provided in root. So these are also classes only, services only, but these behave in a different way. Now if I go into the home, about us, and categories, see here we are able to get the data before loading the route. So we are able to get the data categories things. So now what I can do here, let's go to the category.component, and here in this data we are able to get the data, right? So this dot categories is equal to, I can use data of categories. Okay, so the name, whatever the name we are using in this app routing, so here I am using this categories object, right? In this categories object we are able to have the all the categories data, and I am capturing that categories data inside this one, data of categories. So now if I try to show you the output, so here if I try to, so now if I click on this one, see, so while entering only we are able to see the output. Okay, so this is the usage of the resolver service. So what does this resolver will do is, so whenever we are trying to load the component, so if the component is dependent on any other data, before loading that component, if you want to get any other data, means you can use this resolver service so that we can get those data before loading of this routing only, and we can send this data. So for example, let's say that it is coming from some other place. So let's say that we are having a get categories. We are having a method get categories. So we are having this one, and this one will return I category of some data. And now here it will return a new promise, and resolve and reject. So it will have resolve and reject, and in this one what it will try to do is resolve and reject and set timeout. I am using set timeout after some time. So after some time we will be getting a data, something like, let's say that after 5 seconds we are getting a data. So here I am trying to send resolve of this dot categories. I am sending this dot categories. So this is something like promise of I categories. Okay, so this is the thing. So now get categories will return result. So that means it is getting data from somewhere else. So after 5 seconds you will get the categories data. Now let's try to use the same thing, resolver.service.ts, and here I am using get categories, and I am using this one. Okay, so now you are returning the promise. Let's try to see whether we are able to get. So we are returning this promise of I category only. Let's see we are able to get the data or not. Now I am clicking on a home about us. I am clicking on the categories. See, it is not loading the categories. It is waiting for 5 seconds, and after 5 seconds it is loading the data. Why? Because the data we haven't got it. So the data, the categories needs loads after 5 seconds. So for example, if I try to show you in the console, where is this categories component.ts file? Yeah, console.log this dot categories, sorry, this dot, or otherwise data, console.log data. So you try to see when this console.log will come. So if I go into this one, and if I click on home about us, and I am clicking on the categories, see now the categories has been clicked. It is not loading the component. See, after some time. Why? Because after 5 seconds we got the categories data. Why? Because I wantedly made these categories to get the data 5 seconds. Why? Because from the server it may be taking 5 seconds. So after getting the data only we are loading. For example, if you don't use this resolver, so what you will try to do? So you will try to load something like inject the category service, category category service of type category service. Okay, and this category service, you will make use of this category service. I will try to show you the scenario. So here this dot category service dot get categories. So this one returns a promise, then you will use the dot, then it returns a data, and after getting the data you will assign this dot categories is equal to data. You will assign it like this. So after getting the data only. Now if you try to see the categories, what will happen? Let's see. Now if when I try to click on home about us, if I click on the categories, it will go to that route immediately. So we are having the resolver, so that is the reason it's waiting. So let's try to remove this resolver for the time being. Okay, I removed this resolver. Why? Because we are not making use of the resolver, we are directly getting the data from there. So now here if I try to do, if I click on the categories, immediately I went to the categories, but here the categories data we are not able to show it. See, after some time we got the data. So that means a time delay is there for getting the categories. So that means why? Because the categories component is dependent on the categories data. But when this component is loaded, the categories data, we need to get it back to the server. So it may take some delay, maybe 5 seconds. Sorry. Maybe 5 seconds time is there, but still we are loading the component without having the categories, and after some time we are showing the categories. We need to have a scenario in such a way that until and unless we get the categories only, we need to load the components. Then in that scenario, what we need to do is so here we should not use this one. Why? Because so we need to get the categories before loading of this routing only. So then we will be using this resolver service. Where is this app routing? Yeah, we will be using this resolver service. Now this resolver will load the categories until and unless we get the categories only, then this component will be loaded. If you try to see here, home, about us, and categories, if I try to click, it will wait for some time. Why? Because the categories didn't got. So now when we got the categories, then it will load the component. So this is the usage of this resolver. So we have learned about the resolver and also the static data. Static data means sending the static data only. But sending the dynamic data, we can do it using the resolve. Next one is the last one is before closing of this routing thing. So we have another concept that is nothing but hash. So telling of this hash, what I can say is already I am having this hash thing. Now let's say that I don't know how can I say whether you have touch in the server side, then I can answer. So for example, let's say I am using this hash, right? Let's remove this hash thing. So before this one we don't have this hash thing. Yeah, now let's remove this one. If I try to go home about us categories, we are able to see so the URLs are in such a way that localhost colon 4200 / about us. So for about us page we are having like this, localhost / contact or localhost. So localhost means anything, www.example.com or anything, / users. So localhost /user /1 /Leela. So we are having something like this, the URLs. So if you have touch in the server side or anything, so the server side, the web server. So we will be having more probably the web server. So the web server is the main thing which will take care of this serving of the data. Okay. The most common web servers are, we will be having IIS, Apache, and the Nginx. Okay, so these are the most common web servers we will be having. So apart from this one, so Nginx is a reverse proxy, like this we will be having. So those are all different concepts. I don't want to go deep into the server side. So these are the web servers which will be having. So if you understand this client server architecture, so you need to have about the knowledge about this client server architecture whenever you are working on this websites thing. Okay, whether you may be a front end or back end or anything, you should have a knowledge on this client server architecture. Client server architecture means, let's suppose that you are a client. Client means nothing but a browser. Browser is a client. Client means which wants the data. So which access the data. So browser will access the data. So it will get the data and it will show the data according to our needs. So that means it will get the data. So server means nothing but which serves the data. So which serves the data means which gives the data. So client means which requires the which gets the data, and server means which serves the data means which sends the data. Now when a browser asks the data, so something like when a browser has asked client, let's say that, don't think of browser is one of the client. Okay, you can have different types of clients. You can ask through the programming code, you can ask the data, so you can ask through through any means we will be asking that one. So don't think that browser is one of the client. Okay, so you will be able to understand it. So that is the reason I'm telling the browser. So now browser has asked, I want to open localhost / about us. Okay, so localhost, or otherwise you can say that www.facebook.com, which you can understand, / about us. So this is the page the browser has asked. Now it will go to the server. Okay, so it will go to the server. According to the correct server, it will go to the web server. So I don't want to tell about the DNS and all those things. So it will go to the correct server. So that means Facebook server. It will go to the Facebook server. So there you will be having a web server sitting, always listening to the requests. Okay, so web server, here you will be in the Facebook server, you will be having a web server. So wait, whatever may be the server, so they will be using their own type of servers. So we have told you some examples, right? So like that, the web server will be sitting. So always, so this one you will be having HTTP port, right? HTTP means nothing but it is :80. Okay, HTTP always will be a :8080. Okay, 8080, or shorthand you can write it as 80. So now this one will HTTP, if it is an HTTP protocol, always the web server, always it will try to access to the server, to the Facebook server on port 80. Okay, so if you are mentioning other than port 80, you need to mention, so like ours 4200, like this. So on port 80 you will be having, most probably web server will be listening to the port 80 only. So whatever the requests are coming to this port, it will try to take that request. The web server will try to take the request, and web server will try to process it. Now what it will try to do is, it will see that, okay, this is the facebook.com. It will try to see in that web server configurations to which folder I need to go. So something like, you have in the server you have a folder, Facebook folder. In that Facebook folder, next afterwards it will try to see about us. Okay, in this Facebook folder, it will search for the file about us.html file, or .php file, or .aspx file, any file. It will try to find about this about us HTML, and this web server will send this about us.html file to the same browser. So now the browser understands this about us.html file. Why? Because browser understands the HTML, and it will load the page. So this is the process. Actually, what it will happen briefly, I'm telling you briefly. Inside so many things will happen. So, but this is the thing we will be having. For example, let's say that, so you Facebook / contact. Okay, where it has been went. So for example, let's say that we have Facebook / contact. Okay, so Facebook / contact. So same facebook.com. So it will have it will go to that particular Facebook server, and this one is an HTTP port. It will listen to the port 80, and port 80 it will return to the port 80. And it will try to see, okay, the facebook.com, so which server, which folder I need to access, it will be able to access depending on the domain name. So in the web server, they will be having a configuration. It will go to that Facebook folder, whatever the project folder they will be giving. And in that one, it will try to search for the internal page, contact. So it may be something like contact.php or contact.aspx or everything. So for example, let's say that contact.aspx we are having. Now this contact.aspx, it will not send it to the browser. Why? Because if the browser receives contact.aspx, it doesn't know about this ASPX thing. It knows HTML, CSS and JavaScript. The browser doesn't know other than those two. Now you have a configuration in a web server in such a way that this ASPX file will be sent to the .NET compiler and all those things. Okay, already compiled file, already it will be having, and it will be compiled into a HTML. and this HTML will be sent to the here in the browser. Okay, it will be compiled, and it will be sent to the HTML. So this is the process actually in the browser we have. So now when we now why I am trying to tell you this one is, in Angular we are having something like localhost slash about us. So like this we are having, right, slash contact us. So when we deploy this code in the production and all those things, now if you try to see localhost about us, okay, so this is an internal page. Now the web server will try to search for the about us.html file. Okay, about us HTML file, will try to search it, but it will not try to, but it will be unable to find this file. Why? Because this about us is available in the JavaScript itself. That means in the Angular file itself, the about us component. It refers to the about us component. Okay. So now in a scenarios in a such a way that, so the production server, the web server, so we don't have a permission to modify the configuration of this one. So now whenever you are trying to access this contact us means, web server will try to search for the contact us HTML file like this. So any file, PHP file or anything, it will try to search it. So if you don't have an access to this production server, the production server means web server, to change the configuration, so you can simply use this basic thing, that is nothing but an use hash true. So when we use this use hash true, so what will happen is, so now whatever the things we are trying to use it, so here you will be having a hash here, okay, hash slash. When you try to click on about us, so now this URL, if you try to paste it in this one, so instead of having this about us, we will be having like hash slash about us. Okay, so you will be having a hash in between this one. Now you need to understand another thing, that web server, so the server, when we are trying to send a request to this one, so the web server sends up to here only. After the hash, the web server rejects it, so it will be not sent to the server. So now it will be able to see that home page only. Now it will load this home page only directly. It will load the home page, and from here onwards Angular will take care of this routing thing, and it will, now in the JavaScript we will be able to read the after the hash what it will be having. So after the hash we are having something like about us. Okay, something like about us. After the hash we are able to see about us. Now the Angular will take care of this about us, and it will load the about us component. Okay, so the routing part entirely will be taking care about from the client side only. So normally we can do it in the both ways, but you need to have a server configuration. You need to make a server configuration in such a way that you should be able to access this about us thing also. Angular about us thing. If you don't have an access to change this web server and all those things, you can use this hash URLs. Okay, so this is about the hashing concept. So this is the hashing concept completely related to the browser thing. One second. So this is completely related to the hashing thing. So this is about the hash thing. So this is last about the routing concept. So with this one, we have completed the routing thing. What we have learned here. Here is this one, routing gone. Where is our routing? Yeah. So this is our static, resolve and use hash. And the concept which we will come is the observables. Okay. So this is our observables. Up to now, what we have seen about the subscribe and all those things, right? Here is the subscribe thing. So we have seen here subscribe and all those things, right? So why we will be using this subscribe thing? So this subscribe thing is an observable concept. This is not a core part of this Angular thing. So this is another library that is nothing but an RxJS. So we will be using this RxJS. Angular heavily depends on this RxJS concept. Where is this one? If you go to the package.json, here you will be able to see RxJS. The version we are using is the 7.5.0. Okay. So this is observable. So this is called as an observables. Observables is nothing but what I can say is, so if I try to open this one, so this is the library file. So this is the library file which we are using. So here if you try to see, this is an RxJS. So you can use it for any framework. So this is version 7. Now right now we are using version 7 only. And if you try to see, observable is nothing but what I can say is, it is something like promise kind of situation only, promise kind of things only. We have learned about the promise thing. but there are difference between a promise and an observable. So why we will be using this observable and all the things? So let's say that, for example, promise. So you know about a promise, and we want to learn about an observable. So now we are learning about an observable. So observable sends a stream of data. Okay, sends a stream of data. So it is something like what we can say is observer design pattern. So this one implements the observer design pattern. Okay, and what I can say is, for example, let's say before going into this one, observer design patterns. You will be having something like observable means you will be having something like, I will tell you the basic thing. So here you will be having an observable, okay, and here you will be having a subscriber or an observer, whatever the thing you can take it, observer you will be having. And now this observable will be sending a data. It will be sending a data all the time. For a regular interval of time or for a random interval of time, it will be sending a data, and this observer will subscribe to this data, while subscribe to this observable, so that whatever the data we are sending from this observable, whoever has subscribed to this one, they will receive this data, and they will do the logic according to that one, whatever the data they have received it. So this is an observable concept. So observable sends the data in a regular intervals of time, or at any random interval of time, it will send the data, and whoever subscribes to this one will receive that data. Okay, whoever subscribes to this one will receive the data, and they will do the logic, whatever they want. According to that logic, they will do whatever they want. So this is an observer design pattern. If you try to see here also they will try to see the same thing only. So combines the observer pattern with the iterator pattern. So here it will follows the observer pattern. So it will use the observer pattern. If we click on this observer pattern, do we have anything representation? So this I'll leave it. So simple diagram I have told you. So like this you will be having. Let's try to see this one, or otherwise before seeing, so we'll see it in the next session, or we'll see it in the next session, this observables thing. You'll get confused. I will try to tell you from first onwards. So this is all about the concepts which we have discussed this today. So by this one we have completed entire routing concept, and the next session we'll learn about the observables thing. So we have learned about the resolve, how to send the dynamic data using the resolve guard, we have seen it, and also we have seen about how to change the URL structure using the hash map. Why? Because we will be using is, if you don't have an access to the server configuration and all those things, so you can use this use hash is equal to true, or otherwise you can use normally the internal pages. So we have also learned about the routing guards, the routing thing, child routing, nested routing. These are all the things during the routing file, and all those things also we have learned. So in the next session, what we'll try to learn is, we'll try to learn about the observables. I don't want to explain, I don't want to confuse you. So observable concept purely we'll learn in the next session. So what is an observable? How we will be using these observables? These are all the concepts we'll try to cover it. So we'll try to cover it tomorrow. Then afterwards we'll move on to the forms concept.